Join us on our website at www.thegrandview.org and get more information about our show. There you can download our free book, Everything You Need to Know About Outdoor Painting. But one of the topics that we wanted to deal with or talk about a little bit is about artist burnout. Now, artist burnout is the same thing as artist block. You know, that's where you're actually like in a space where you just don't feel like you want to create anymore. Artist block is such a real thing that they actually have a term for it. And it's kind of like where you lose your muse. And oftentimes it's at a point when you've had lots of stress. Any of you who have ever done any art shows, you'll like burn, and then all of a sudden you get to a point and the show's over, and then it's like, now what? Especially if you don't have anything that follows that up. One way to block that is, if you're planning on art shows and stuff, is to constantly have another one going, another one going, another one going. And so when you're finished with one, you're actually halfway through another one. And it kind of keeps you from that lull. It's that lull that's the problem. It's that lull if you're not in class every week. When you stop and all of a sudden you don't have enough to push you back into that. So the biggest problem that you can do in artist block, and believe me, I've had those, or just feeling like you not want to paint anymore, the worst thing you can do is not do it. You can't fall into that zone. It's important during that time to continuously work through that period of time. Don't say, I'm going to take a 3-month break. Because I know students who have done that over the years. After teaching for 4 years, I've seen students take that break. And then they come up 5 years later and they go, can I come back into class? And I go, well, how many paintings have you done over 5 years? I haven't touched my paint since the last time I was here. So that's a common thing. What happens is that you kind of start replacing your painting with other things, and you know how that is. It's that thing becomes full, and yet the thing that you really love is painting. And so I was talking with Mercedes this morning, and she's like, she's at that point where she's like, she comes in and she's just not inspired. And I go, well, you have any choice. And then we talked, Molly, a little bit last week too about the same thing. And I said, for heaven's sakes, look at what's going on in your life. Look at what you just did. You moved to a major house. And then, you know, part of it too is the expectation, like with Mercedes. Can I use you as a? Yeah. Okay. So you know, here her husband finds her this house that's just stunning, and says, "Here, honey, we're gonna get this because you want a studio, and I want to get." So he gets this house that has this studio. It's actually a studio with a house attached to it. I haven't seen it yet, but I hear it's extraordinary. But the thing is, it's an amazing thing. And so it's like, here you go. In the first week, she's in there, and he's going, opening up the door every 30 minutes, going, you painting yet? You know?
I have one of those too.
Yeah.
Still unpacking boxes.
Yeah. And so remember, like when you moved into your studio, it was just a big breakdown. I said, don't do any homework, just get your stuff out of your studio, even if it's into the garage, but clear that space. And I don't know if you're living with that. But that is huge. And I have a couple of people that I phone coach that are going through this same thing right now. They'll say, oh, I'll take a month off. And I go, don't do that. Still keep your phone coaching going, even if you don't paint. Stay in the conversation, because if you know that while you're going through this, you're checking in, and you know as soon as you have an opening, you can get back in again. It's easy, but to have to reschedule, reset up, that just becomes too much of a big problem, especially when you're coming off doing a major move. Now, oftentimes what happens when you're experiencing artist block is that you're just exhausted, and you don't even want to acknowledge that you're exhausted. The sheer act of painting is exhausting. Kind of come up to what you're doing, and painting's supposed to be joyful and fun and wonderful, but it's actually one of the hardest things that you can actually do. It's amazing how much energy it takes to paint. And so a lot of people come up to painting and they're tired to begin with all the stuff that they've done, and they stand in front of their painting and they blame their painting. They don't realize they're exhausted because of everything else. It just shows up in painting because that's the one place you have to kind of show up all together, and it's not coming together then. And so oftentimes you have to look at your schedule to see what you are actually doing and not blame yourself, and give yourself a couple of weeks off. With Molly, I said, take a week off. Don't do anything. It's the best thing you could do. When you're just uninspired, first thing, take a week off. Not a month, not 6 months, not a year. Don't, because that's going to open up problems. You're going to stop painting. 20 years? That's how long it was? Doing this 20 years, it's hard to get back to it, isn't it?
I'm staining woodwork and refinishing furniture.
But that's not, yeah, you do all the other stuff. And then all of a sudden they're like, then I hear, oh, I'm just too busy to come back to class again. Because you fill that space up with something. But at the end, the one thing you're going to regret is that you didn't stay with painting. And when students come back, they go, I said, where have you been? And they said, well, I decided to take a break. And I go, 5 years? That's a really long break. And they go, I know, but I'm stressed. Why are you stressed? And they go, you know how it is when you're retired, you don't have any more time for things. So anyway, so you don't want to take a break. You want to continue on. You could take a week break, but in that week break, you have to allow yourself and give yourself that thing where you say, I'm taking a week break from everything. Not only just painting, but everything. You just literally say, you just need to regenerate yourself and say, that's it. I'm stepping away from life. And when you're under a lot of stress, sometimes we don't give ourselves that permission. But I guarantee you those bills and things that you're worried about will be there next week. It's a good time to tell your husband, hey, let's go up the coast and get away from it all. You know, or just watch Jerry Springer all week. If you think your life is chaotic, watch a week of Jerry Springer, and all of a sudden you realize your life ain't that bad. So part of it is just pure exhaustion. But then there's also times when you're not exhausted, you're just kind of blah. And the thought of going back to your easel to paint again isn't exciting. And you could be burned out. You could really be burned out. But again, don't give up. Try something different. So like with Mercedes today, she paints small little paintings. I go, what if you go into your studio and you no longer paint small paintings? What if all of a sudden you just break through and say, I'm not doing anything smaller than a 30 by 30, or a 40 by 40, or a 50 by 50. When you pick up that brush and you look at that big canvas, you become a different person now. And if you're a big painter, you should go to small paintings. But you know what that was like? When all of a sudden you got to big canvases, like, how can you go back to small again? And wasn't it more exciting?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it gave you a new outlook. And instead of sitting down to paint, stand up. Change something. You're still doing art. It doesn't have to be the same kind of art. And if everybody knows you as being a bird lady or a landscape painter, then become a portrait artist or do something. Change your focus. Change your size. Even change from brush to palette knife or vice versa. That sometimes will break that whole conversation. What you're bored with is that everyday routine of doing that thing all the time. And anybody would be bored of that. But artist block is a real thing. How you deal with it is what's important. And eventually you'll overcome that. And a lot of times you just won't be inspired by anything. And then you just kind of have to evaluate what it is to be an artist and how special that is. And treat yourself to the feeling of what it's like that you've done this amazing thing that very few people can actually do. It's so special that they build museums for us. They don't build museums for accountants. They don't build museums for even golfers. There might be a golfer here or there, but you don't go to the Louvre to go see golfers, right? So these incredible institutions, art is the basis. When Hitler was invading countries, he was looting them not of golf clubs. He was going after the art. Why? Because art is that important. And also really be in touch with the legacy that you are actually creating right now. And oftentimes, when you become bored, it's because either you're not sharing your work or you're not having integrity to your work for yourself. So if you're painting something that is meaningful for you, if you're painting something that you are constantly trying to share and communicate to people. If you think about what it is that draws you to art, what draws you to art is that it's actually communication, it's sharing. And it's a wonderful thing that you yourself, you got to turn inward and not outward. Don't look for subject matter and things. Try to paint something that's really close to you. Paint your bed in the morning when the sun comes through. Something that is really about you. Paint your dog, something that you love, your kitchen. Something that's about you that you can relate to and be comfortable with. You might be so far removed because of your subject matter that you feel like it's a different person there doing that. And art that's really great, when we look at Van Gogh and things, it's really about their life. Monet, it's about their life. And oftentimes you just have to start looking inward because you spend a year looking outward for the pretty picture or whatever idea. Got to come up with an idea, when yet the most beautiful idea is your classmate right next to you, who means a lot to you. You might not be able to do that well, but what a wonderful exercise that you'll have. And just get that everything you're doing is exercises. It doesn't matter at the end what you do, whether or not it's good or not. And then just concentrate on the legacy that you're leaving behind for your great-grandkids. And think about, what is it that I want to show them? And when you start getting into that mode of sharing, or knowing that you're going to have an exhibit, you're going to show your work, that all of a sudden will stimulate you because you start thinking about what pleasure you're going to start giving to other people. And when you're in that space, it's a lot easier to get out of the space of you, which is where artist block starts in here. And you start flowing again and getting out. So I don't know if that helps or not, but it's just something to think about. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that artist burnout, okay? Because that can happen too. And she's kind of a little bit in an artist burnout too. You sense it. What happens in this situation here is that you have somebody in classroom that all of a sudden gets a couple of paintings that are kind of clever. It's like one thing happens, it's like, ooh, and then it's like, oh, Becky, you're such an artist. Who knew? These ideas you get are so original. I wish I could have that kind of vision. And you're sitting there going, it's just kind of an accident, but okay. But then what happens is that, you think at this point that now people are looking on you as, well, what is Becky going to bring? Let's just wait until what Becky brings, because didn't we get like that?
Like waiting or Sharon.
Or Sharon is like, so it becomes the heavies when you all of a sudden you start rising up and so a lot of times what happens is people don't want to bring that kind of attention to ourselves. And so then, especially as people that are shy, and so they have a tend to retreat. And oftentimes in that retreat, it kind of feels like a burnout, or like you just don't have any more artistic ideas to blow us away. And that's a huge commitment that you're trying to get through. And you can see where a lot of artists who have this incredible idea to paint something. And, like Jackson Pollock, he worked all of his life to try to paint something that had never been painted before. And he figured it out. He wasn't going to paint, he was going to splatter. That was going to be his thing. And so he started splattering away. And people are going, you're a genius. And they put you on the cover of Life magazine. And then they go, oh, you're such a genius. Let's see what happens next. sometimes there isn't a next there. It took everything he had to get there. Can you imagine the artist block and burnout that he had when he was trying to figure out what my next is? It wasn't until he actually was asked by Life magazine, or one of the magazine television shows, that wanted to watch him paint. And he literally was painting and realized what a shtick he had. All he could do was that. He felt like a monkey at that point, because that was it. So he took up drinking because he couldn't deal with himself anymore. That's all he had. And sometimes that's all you have. That's it. I woke up one morning, had to go pee, went into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, thought, what a great idea. And then, you painted, everybody goes, oh my God, you in the mirror at night. What a wonderful idea it is. And you're like going, wow, it's kind of an accident. And then, it's like, then you think, how can I outdo myself? And then all of a sudden, now you're like, stopped. You're paralyzed. And that could feel like artist block. And so in a way, it's really wonderful to be able to share things with everybody. But you can run into this issue where you're, a one-shot Mary kind of thing, where, you just kind of fizzle out. I don't think that's going to happen to you, because you're going to constantly strive for better painting. And even though the ideas are great that you come up with, it's not about your ideas. You can be as clever as you want, but if you don't have the skills to paint, if you don't know how to paint well. You look at artists like Richard Schmidt, who are just outstanding painters, and when you have that skill, you don't have to be clever. Leave clever and original and stuff to people who want to dazzle the world with whatever. If you develop really good painting skills, you will go a lot further than people who are just trying to be clever. And so just go on and just keep on painting like you are, and don't worry about what we think. And share that. Share how you paint. Molly, you had a question.
I just wanted to know, because I think I had burnout when I got done with your portrait class. And I also was dealing with the problem with our dog. And so I just wonder if there's a particular amount of time that burnout lasts, because I really had to make a conscious choice to climb out of it. Mm-hmm. But I just made a conscious choice of just like, I'm gonna walk myself out of this, and just choose to not be. Well, one thing, I was exhausted. I did get rested up. That was really important.
And that's what I told you were going through too. I said, look at what you're going through. You paint, and you're like all the time, all your expectations, the whole world expects things from you, and you're constantly going that way. Throw that on top of that, a week workshop somewhere else, mm-hmm. where you're painting 5 days a week, all day long.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you have your issue with your dog's health, where you're having to deal with whether or not you have to put him to sleep or not. In that space, to be thinking, oh my God, I have no will to paint. I'm like, nobody would. Mm-hmm. And you have to be okay with that. Yeah. And look, you found joy again by just painting a bunch of colored eggs.
Yeah.
Remember, you just went down to the store and said, oh, look how pretty these eggs are. And eggs are like one of my first class projects. Mm-hmm. And you ended up just finding some joy in just the simplest thing. Yeah. And so it's not about outdoing yourself. I mean, what if Jackson Pollock actually started painting eggs when he hit that point where he felt like the expectations for him were just amazing? It's the same reason why Thomas Kincaid drank himself to death, is because his expectations, he couldn't live with that. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that, the art world was using him as a joke. I mean, you can imagine how hard it was for him to try to deal with all that. When you're just a great painter trying to become a name brand of some kind, and anybody would have loved to have been in his shoes the first year. $10 million a year. Come on, you could paint those cottages left and right. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, you don't know what the art world is going to think of you. You're just thinking, wow, this is a great start. I'm on my way. 2 years, 3 years. Pretty soon you got 30, 40 million in the bank. you would think, okay, you could stop, but you can't because now you're a corporation. And the corporation says, we need cottages. And you're going, I'm sick of cottages. So he tried to do... Yeah, with blue bonnets, same thing, Winberg's blue bonnets, you know. The thing is, I'm sure he never wants to paint another one because there's so much more that he's available. But you know, let's face it, when you got people that want that, that's what you paint.
Like Picasso, he was a noted artist and a great artist.
But you see...
But he changed and changed
Yeah.
and changed and changed.
He was constantly reinventing himself, but he was not fearful of the outcome. He was kind of like a little bit of a bull. And he figured, well, whatever it is, people will eventually clog on. But very few people have that kind of confidence. And he wasn't a corporation. Thomas Kincaid was a corporation. And so he got a different kind of burnout, just as success, but it was that same thing over and over and over again. And he tried to do plein air painting and try to go into that direction. It wouldn't sell. And the corporation said, you got to paint those cottages because galleries need their work. And so he drank himself to death because that's no fun. So you've got to watch all that. There's a lot of balance. And you're dealing with this as an artist. It's not like, you know, an accounting thing where you can pick and choose clients. You're dealing with your internal emotions. And art is personal. When you can't paint, it hurts. It hurts when all of a sudden you go to your canvas and you go, ouch, I don't like this. Acknowledge that and go, screw it. I'm going to take a huge canvas and I'm going to take a palette knife and I'm just going to smear paint around to be a kid. Yeah, that's what you did. And remember I told you? I told Mercedes today, I said, she says, well, I'm thinking about maybe doing a big pumpkin. And I said, good, something like a 30 by 30 or a 36 by 36 square. I see that. And I said, paint it finger paint. Do it all in finger paint. And don't worry about the oils killing you. They're not going to kill you. What kills me are people that sit there and going, oils are going to kill you. It's like, no, they're not. You kill me, get out of my way. But take paint and see what it feels like to be a child again. When you used to love painting, you were finger painting.
Get your fingers dirty.
Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to. Break that mold. Get it out of yourself. Expanded instructional DVDs that feature an hour-long demonstration of today's painting and other paintings in the series are available at the Grandview by calling 1-800-511-1337. Join us on our website, thegrandview.org, and get more information about our show. There you can download our free book, Everything You Need to Know About Outdoor Painting, along with a free diagram of today's subject. Is funded in part by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.